Welcome to MetaPod, the podcast where we discuss operational execs and organizations that make and move stuff, and our common headaches, digital transformation, the forever labor shortage, and doing more with less. And now, the host of MetaPod, Ron Crabtree.
Okay, so it's Ron Crabtree back, your host of MetaPod. And here we explore, those common three challenges that organizations face, digitization of work, the forever labor shortage, always being shorthanded, and then just generally doing more with less. Less of everything, supply, logistics, material, waste, people, et cetera, are all common themes. And today I have joining me Kenneth Wisinski with SA Partners, and Ken's going to be exploring a topic I've always found pretty interesting. Is, we talk about improving and sustainability of improvements in organizations, making things sticky when we try to deploy, improvement programs of all flavors. And, there's lots of talk around, process, or you have to talk about people, process, and technology, and, tools like value stream mapping and lean techniques, et cetera. But what I found really refreshing about what Ken's going to be sharing with us here is, what about the performance and the overall, I'll call it the repeatability, reliability, and the stickiness of what we're doing? And why do so many organizations, launch something, but then it seems like kind of slip back into the same old before we know it? It's like, wait a minute, I thought we did something to improve that. And why are we talking about this again? It's a pretty common theme. So I think we'll have a lot of fun with this. And Ken, why don't you share a little bit about you and your background and how you got here in front of me today?
Yeah, thanks, Ron, and a pleasure to be with you today. A little bit about me. I was raised a Detroit car guy and spent 30 plus years in the automotive industry in many different roles. And I worked inside Toyota for several years and then at a few of the prominent tier one parts suppliers before I finally transitioned into consulting in early 2019.
Okay. So you've been in management consulting for about 5 years?
Yeah.
All right.
And I've found that I really enjoy this consulting work because it really allows me to mix together my diverse skills and experience to create an impact for our clients. Okay. And of course, our consulting firm is SA Partners. You mentioned that earlier. And much like the big three firms, we very generally provide management consulting through a wide range of services that help organizations tackle the most critical challenges. Yeah. However, we tend to evaluate what's happening in an organization or in a team or in a group through a somewhat uncommon lens.
All right. Well, that's the lens I'm really interested in learning more about with our audience here. And that would suggest we could pivot into a bit of a diagnostic. But what looking for here would be, for the uninformed, right? Or perhaps folks that aren't real close to implementing continuous improvement programs, executives, people responsible for at the board of director level or whatever. What's the advice, the diagnostic you would offer generically? What should we be looking for? What kinds of questions should we be asking to determine if there's opportunities for us to make a big improvement in how we get things done and addressing behaviors within the organization?
Yeah. So for sure, I think what I want to try to achieve today in our talk is to give our audience a little bit of a sliver of a glimpse through that uncommon lens. Yeah. And I'll start with kind of 2 or 3 places where they can look. Like is where a good place to apply that lens will be.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about in more detail kind of what to look for and what they might be able to do in terms of practicing looking through that lens, because seeing the world through this behavioral system, whatever methodology, it isn't something you just do. We're not usually trained to do it. It's not something you usually talk about in business, but we find it quite impactful when we talk to our clients. So first, let me give a quick, I'm going to use this word behavior over and over again. Let's do a quick definition, because I mean something very specific by it. Right? I don't mean a lot of kumbaya around the fire, mushy kind of stuff. I mean something very specific. It's what people do and what people say. What people do, what people say, or perhaps what they're not doing and not saying that we wish they would.
or the disconnect between the two. They're saying this, but they're doing something else.
Yeah, those kinds of things, right? So a way to sort of sift through that and think about, are we really talking about what people do and what people say, or are we talking about something else? Is, could you record it? Could you bring out your iPhone real quick and record it? Yeah, you can see them do it. You can hear them say it. Yeah, then we're talking about behavior. And that's what I mean when I use the word behavior over and over again in the rest of our talk today. Okay. And then we started today, your introduction included, looking at how to make an improvement more sustainable, how to make processes sticky, how to make business systems work consistently over time. Yeah. And true. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in more detail in just a second. But I might want to change the title of our podcast here today.
Go ahead.
I would call it Better Behavior Begets Better Business.
I like that. Better behavior begets better business.
Yeah. That might be a fun title for our podcast today, right? And I'll explain more what I mean in a minute here. Okay. So let's talk about a couple of places to look for this behavioral stuff. Yeah. A couple of fun areas where our audience can take it right back. As soon as they finish listening to the podcast, they can take it right back to their team, their organization, and start looking in these places through this lens. Now, the first one is what I call buzzwords. Yeah. If in your organization, you hear a lot of these buzzwords, it's an awesome place to look. So what I mean by buzzwords, I'm talking about empowerment, accountability, collaboration, engagement, ownership, these kinds of buzzwords, right? If we're hearing those kind of words in our organization, this is a great place to look for behaviors. And I'll explain what I mean in a minute. The other place to look is what you mentioned at the top of our talk. And that is, you've got a process or a business system that its performance, its outcomes are unstable or inconsistent. Right? Today they're great. Tomorrow, not so much. On Wednesday, they're kind of and they sort of bounce around and perform, quite a bit of variation throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. Yeah. Again, another place to look. Connected to that, maybe some business system or process where you've implemented an improvement. Great, hooray! And sure enough, performance improves, but over time, it slowly goes back to where we were. Or we've seen even worse than where we were. Yeah. If you've got any of those, it's a great place to look, right? And then, of course, if your organization has a lot of firefighting, if your team, your organization, your group has a lot of firefighting, again, it can be another pretty good place to look through this lens. Yeah. And then the last place is what I'll call viral behavior, right? Perhaps we're seeing people do things or hearing them say things that we don't like, right? It's not what we would prefer, right? It can often be traced back to other behaviors that are happening. So let me give a little example. If you were to do something and your boss or your colleague that you really respect really recognized it, hey Ron, that was really great. Thanks a lot for doing that. What are the chances you would do something like that again?
Pretty high.
Pretty high, right? So in other words, the behavior of your boss or your respected colleague influences your behavior. Yeah. And so I'm switching that around a little bit. So I'm looking at your behavior. You're doing that thing over and over again, and I really like it. What behavior is happening around you? That is
that supports or diminishes it.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the three places. So I'll just say them again: buzzwords, instability, degrading performance, yeah, and viral behavior.
Okay. So the viral behavior, I'm still wrapping my head around that. Because you think about social media, we think about, if you're being an employer of choice, one of the advice issues there is, what are people saying about your organization, its culture, what do they say in private? They're saying this out loud, but over here they're saying something that's incongruent with, what it is you're looking for. So I'm still wrapping my head around the viral aspect here. And I guess I'd like you to expand on that. Maybe you could give an example of how you saw that play. Don't disclose anything about the organization, but give an example of an organization that was exhibiting that behavior just to help us wrap our head around that.
Great question. So, yeah, one organization we worked with, they had a real trouble getting folks in the working teams, the frontline workers, the engineers, the people who touch the work every day, to really provide any kind of ideas for improvement or suggestions on how to do things a little bit differently, or even when meetings got arranged and events got planned where, okay, for the next half a day, we're going to talk about how to improve this thing. They really couldn't get the people who touch the work every day to provide any useful suggestions or input or even really much in the way of participation in these things.
All right, so I'm beginning to wrap my head around that. Go ahead, keep going.
And so when we started to take a look at it, it turns out that the 2 or 3 managers who were really pushing for this, the way that they interacted with their folks and the way that they treated those ideas when they came, were very dismissive and very, honestly, sometimes disrespecting. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, the behavior that they were seeing that they didn't like was this, non-participation, non-input, non-engagement, so to speak, And when we really looked at it, we saw that the behavior of the managers was really causing that lack of participation.
Yeah. So that's pretty helpful. So that narrative
begats their behavior.
Okay. So that reminds me of a scenario I ran into years ago, and you can tell me if I'm on the right track here with understanding the notion of viral behavior. And I was working with an organization that made very complex printed circuit boards that would end up in, military weaponry. And it was a multi-step process where they were layering these circuits, and there'd be successive layers of circuits being laid on the same board, right? So imagine this physical board going from screening to, silk screening and etching, and then into the plating, and then coming back, and it would actually go through multiple cycles. And really uncovered there was a significant issue with, defects that would happen at certain points in the value stream. Then it wouldn't get detected until too far downstream, right? So we had way too much scrap. So we're trying to set up a better feedback system so that when the receiving area saw something that was going to be a problem, that they could communicate that more effectively. We're trying to use whiteboards and just kind of keep track hour by hour of kind of what we're seeing. The notion was creating, feedback, right? A feedback loop to the source department so that they would be aware of what was being seen, and then we could work together to resolve the root cause. Well, that kind of blew up in our face. It didn't get traction at all because it turns out this was a long tenured workforce, small community, and everybody was kind of reticent and unwilling to give the feedback because they felt like their, coworker in another department would get punished or, or may do something they don't want to do. They found it as kind of like a finger pointing exercise as opposed to really getting at the root cause. So that was kind of a viral thing of the way I'm trying to wrap my head around this. This is, it seemed like the right thing to do. The managers are nodding their heads, but the people just couldn't begin to buy into what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So in this case, the behavior we're after is that feedback. Hey, Ron, you just handed me this part and it's not quite got the thing in the right place, right? And you weren't getting that. Yeah. And so what was happening when somebody did provide that feedback?
Right? That's probably the part we missed.
Yeah. So if somebody did provide that feedback, maybe the manager of the previous department would, grumble and grouse and be upset or whatever, or even yell at the other people. I don't know. I wasn't there. Right.
Right.
And so you can see after just 1 or 2 of those, my feedback's going to stop. Right.
Okay.
Where, if they had instead been very appreciative and thankful for that feedback and, hey, my interest is really producing good parts. So anything you can do to help me do that, like giving me feedback when I make a defect, I'm going to appreciate and really like, right? It's going to keep coming, right? So my behavior is going to influence yours and vice versa.
All right. So do you want to talk more about the diagnostic before we pivot to the go do part of it?
No, I think when I talk about the go do part of it, we'll again revisit the diagnostic in any case.
All right. So let's go back through those three things we talked about. Just make sure could you repeat those again? Just so loud and clear.
Yep. Buzzwords.
Right. The use of buzzwords that don't seem to be fulfilled in reality of actually happening.
Yep.
A disconnect between the buzzwords being used and what we're seeing.
Yeah. So let's jump right into the kind of what to do about it. And again, in our short talk here, I'm only hoping to provide a bit of a playing field for our audience where they can take it home and practice it a bit, because it does take a while to develop this skill to see these behaviors. Yeah.
Right.
So buzzwords. So as you're in your groups, in your teams, in your company, and you hear all these kinds of buzzwords, right? Take a time out, just a really short time out. Okay. We really need to encourage ownership around here. Okay, that's a good thing. Sure. What does that mean? What will people do to tell you that they have ownership? What would people say that would lead you to believe we've got good ownership around here?
What would good look like with respect to ownership?
Yeah. And very specifically, what behaviors would we see? What would people do? What would they say?
Same thing with empowerment, right? So
Same thing.
we want empowerment. So what does empowerment look like? And so you're saying, if you're seeing disconnect, right? We're talking the buzzword, but we're not actually seeing the evident behavior of that happening. There's a disconnect. And you're saying,
even just
time out.
Even just, guys, we've been using this word empowerment for 2 years now. I don't know what it means. I don't know how to recognize empowerment. What air quotes here, right? What does that mean? How would I know when I see empowerment?
So give me an example where you were successful at closing the gap on some of this buzzword gap, if you could. Give me help the audience understand the go-do part. What would you go do if you determine there is a gap? What do you do about that?
Yeah. So if you can identify some behaviors, what people do and what people say, that are connected to, what would empowerment look like in our company, right? Great. Now, when you set up your processes, when you set up your business systems, you can set up opportunities and the structure to encourage those behaviors. Yeah. Not to encourage empowerment, because I don't know what that is. Right? But to encourage those very specific behaviors that we've identified. Let me use teamwork as an example. Teamwork. We don't get much teamwork around here. We really want to improve the teamwork. Great. When do people have the opportunity to meet and the time to talk about these important subjects in cross-functional teams? Never. Okay, let's create those opportunities. Let's create that process. Let's create that business system that gives them the opportunity, the forum, the time to work together on a particular problem or a particular issue or a particular topic. Yeah. The behavior is they come together and they work on the problem together, right? And if we set that system up to make it happen, we'll get teamwork. Yeah, because we've identified the behavior of what that looks like, and we can encourage that behavior. We can actually do something about that. I can't do anything about more teamwork, but I can do something about getting people together in a room and talking about a particular topic.
Yeah, making sense.
Yeah, and that's actually a decent segue into the second place to apply this lens, the second place to look. Yeah, and earlier we said it was any kind of unstable or inconsistent process. Yeah.
So we're not getting consistent, reliable results out of whatever that process is we're thinking about, would suggest something's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think the first thing here is, do we even have a way to measure this process in the first place, right? It's classic KPI. Okay, this is not for anybody, right? Any problem solving, Six Sigma, lean person, okay, do we even have a key metric to even measure? Okay, great. And if we do, fantastic. Do we understand what the key inputs are? Again, classic Six Sigma, whatever. I'm talking about the output Y and the input X's.
Right.
For all of us Six Sigma geeks out there, right? Again, that stuff isn't so uncommon, And if you think about KPIs and those inputs as the KPIs really are usually very lagging indicators. We only know what number we got, what performance we got after the fact.
Correct.
So, of course, in the world of Six Sigma, the reason we're so interested in those input X's is because sometimes we can actually do something about those input X's before the final result gets done, right?
Right.
And what I'm suggesting is, even before that, if we look at behaviors in the right way, we can have not lagging indicators, not live performance indicators, but real leading indicators.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. So you're suggesting that, we're actually looking for behavior signals.
Yes.
As a leading indicator is what you're suggesting.
Yes, exactly. Let me see if I can come up with a really basic rudimentary example. I'm of an age now where my health is a little bit unstable. Yeah, it's unstable, or I have a health event every once in a while. Yeah. And in order to, so that's the lagging result, that the KPI that we're talking about. Yeah. A key input, of course, in this case is my chemistry, my body chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. So if we get the chemistry right, we've got a much better chance of having a good health result overall. Terrific. But I still can't really do a lot about the chemistry. Like I'm not a chemist. I can't influence so live the what's going on in my body. But what I can do is take a pill every day.
Right.
Yeah. So the behavior I need, if I get the behavior right, taking the pill every day at 6 p.m., I've got a much better chance of getting my chemistry right, which our input X, which highly improves the chance of my end KPI result being good. Yeah, great. So if I focus on getting the behavior right, I've got a much better chance of the good result. So let's talk about getting the behavior right. Okay, I need to take a pill every day at 6 p.m. Great. When I first started doing this, I was maybe at 55, 60%. This is something really important to me. I'm highly motivated to get this right. I was at 55 or 60% taking the pill every day. Right? Okay, you big dummy. Get a pill box, for goodness sake. Right? So I did. That's the classic example, right? Let's steal the Kanban solution from, Toyota. Let's steal the Kaizen approach from whatever, Motorola, who knows, right? So I did the pill box thing. Didn't work for me, right? I was still only at, 60%, 65% taking the pill. Many reasons for that. It just didn't, the pill box was never in the right place at the right time with me, at the right, to remind me. I couldn't keep it filled consistently, this sort of thing, right? It just didn't work for me. So my behavior was still at 60%. It turns out my wife and I have dinner together nearly every night. So what we did is we changed it so that when we set the table, we set plate, fork, napkin, pill. I'm not going to miss dinner.
And you're not going to miss that either. Yeah. You're not going to miss the behavior of, doing your meds like you should be too, or supplements or whatever it is you're doing to treat.
Right. So we changed the system, we changed the process, we changed the structure of that to provide the right opportunity and make it easy for the behavior to happen. Really focusing on, let's modify the behavior. That made the input X a lot more consistent. And with the input X a lot more consistent, the ultimate result, the KPI, was a lot more stable and a lot better.
Exactly. So I'm wondering, I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, if you can, that's for a second, is, I think about, the old axiom, what you measure gets done, right? And then the old axiom of be careful what you ask for because you might get it, right? So, you got to ask for the right balance, speaking about balanced scorecard concept of asking for a balance of behaviors. For example, I'm only looking for cost reduction. Well, what happens to quality? What happens to customer service? One-dimensional ask of the organization. And then I think about what's called the Hawthorne effect. And most Lean Six Sigma experts have heard these stories around Hawthorne Electric and the studies they did back in the 20s, which was a forebearer. Many of the practices we use in total quality management. And they discovered that just paying attention to something had a positive effect on the performance. And when you stop paying attention to it, that's where you revert back to the old behaviors, right? We did this, we were successful for a while, and then it seemed like all the improvement fell off. So there's a two-edged sword here. You got to make sure you're measuring the right thing. In the famous study, they were messing around with lighting in the workplace. And they found out that the lighting had nothing to do with it. The fact that when they change the lighting, they go out and do another time study. So people saw that, right? They were paying attention. So they were more attentive to their work. And it was, a false indicator, right? So that's the trick is, what are the right KPIs? Messing with the light settings wasn't the thing. It was the behavior, paying attention and being attentive to the results we were getting in the workplace and building that in. So that's the tricky thing is what are the right KPIs to attach to behavior so that we can take advantage of the Hawthorne effect from the perspective of when you pay attention to something, it's going to be better, but then not fall victim to, the minute I take my eye off it, it slips back or backward into the same old. It's embedding it into the culture as part of what we do, right? It's that code of honor, the basis of which, our expectations for each other and behavior. Don't know, do you agree, disagree, and just have a little fun with this one here for a minute?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's see. First of all, I definitely want to separate this concept of KPIs versus measuring behavior. Yeah. The KPIs, again, whatever you need, but
they are what they are.
They are what they are, right? It's going to be profit, productivity, that sort of thing. That's fine. And I don't want to change those.
Right.
But as we said earlier, they're very lagging. And there's nothing that, by the time I know what the number is, it's too late. I can't do anything about it, right?
Exactly.
So I just want to get to a place where I can notice behavior early on and have a chance to influence that a little bit. Is all I'm trying to do. And I want to measure, we even call them KBIs, key behavioral indicators.
Behavioral indicators. Give me a couple of examples, if you could, of a KBI you've seen be successful.
Well, in the example I just used, I take my pill every day. The behavior is take
on a personal basis. I'm thinking more of an organizational behavior.
Yeah. So we tend to measure really, really, really simple things. Things like if a meeting or something is not going well and not very successful, right? Do people show up on time? Are they prepared? Have they read the pre-reads? Right? When we first work with a team on something like this, we would measure those things. Yeah. And once we create the system and the structures to make sure those things are working well. So for example, do the pre-read.
Right.
Do we give people the information beforehand in enough time to allow them to do the pre-read? No, I gave it to them 5 minutes before. How come you didn't pre-read it? Right? This kind of thing. So once we get those behaviors right, we'll change them.
Got it.
Right?
Getting there. Bell getting there.
And we'll slowly, so once those behaviors right now we're going to look at, does everyone in the meeting participate? Does everybody give their input? Right? And over time, we'll slowly work these behaviors so that we're having a successful meeting or a successful system. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm making sense of it. Thank you. Key behavior indicators. That's deeper down in the weeds, but it's very personal. It's that, what happened, what didn't happen from a behavior perspective around successful cross-departmental meetings, problem-solving sessions, ongoing Kaizen circles, whatever it may be. You're looking for the behavior side of it and less concerned about the KPI side of it, which is the trailing indicator. We're looking for the leading indicators, behaviors that are showing we got people engaged. We're talking about the right things at the right level with the right support structure.
And then another thing to unpack about your question, right? You said, okay, what they found was that just the fact that they were paying attention caused a change in other people's behavior. Yeah.
The upside of the Hawthorne effect.
The upside of the Hawthorne effect, right? Great. And when they stopped paying attention, the performance probably went back to where it was.
Right.
Yeah. Again, this now circles back to my third thing about viral behavior, right? Behavior begets behavior. Okay, they might not have recognized it back then when they did that study, but just the fact that they paid attention caused the workers to behave somewhat differently. Yeah. And when they stopped paying attention, they stopped behaving that way. Yeah. And my point is, again, this lens, being able to see that as something slightly different than we're normally trained, right? Than we're normally talk about in business. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about that viral behavior and what do we do? What do we do there to, use that phenomena as, a positive force versus a negative force?
Well, first of all, we will need to recognize and decide what kinds of things that we're after, right? So let's go back to the teamwork thing.
Right.
Yeah. We're after a bunch of teamwork. Okay. So now we've got and we take the time to set up the structures and the opportunities and the forums for all that to happen. Hooray. And yet when the folks are together and doing it, they're still not really working as a team. The conversations they're having are not they don't share with each other. They don't, right? What you can do is get a core group of people who very consciously are going to look for this and very consciously recognize it and highlight it and encourage it, right? And over time, this becomes how those teamwork opportunities happen. Yeah. And then when they're in another team, they'll start to do the same thing. And then those teams tell two teams who tell two teams who tell two teams. Yeah. But you do have to be a little conscious of it and pretty intentional about it up front. And that can feel kind of awkward.
Yeah, it can feel very awkward. I want to make sure I understood. Excuse me, little frog in my throat there. So we're talking about viral behavior. It's, if I understood you and make sure I got this right, is we're talking about the buzzwords, etc., but we're not seeing the behavior to go with the buzzwords. Is that what you're getting at?
A little bit two separate things. The buzzwords are just, again, a place to look, right? If you hear the buzzword, you could say, I can make the challenge and just say, well, what behaviors are we talking about, right? So now we're seeing the world through this lens of behaviors. Another place to look is this connection between, okay, I'm seeing some behaviors that I either like or don't like. Are there other behaviors around it that are
Contributing,
encouraging, influencing, right?
positive or negative.
Positive or negative. Yeah. So it's just another place to look for this concept of behaviors. And again, all I'm trying to do today is just provide folks, this lens, and where do I put this lens? Yeah. And what might I see?
All right.
And it takes some practice.
Yeah. So help me out here and just kind of refresh me. What would be a viral signal or statement, or what do you see that Kenneth would say that's an example of a viral thing going on? Give an example. Just help me get refocused on that.
Well, if we just go back to the Hawthorne thing you used earlier, this connection between, okay, we're suddenly seeing people's performance change. Is there something else going on? Because all we've done is change the lighting. That can't possibly be it.
Right.
Is there something else going on? Well, suddenly the managers and the, improvement people are all paying attention to us. There's another behavior that's happening, right?
So that's the viral connection that you're getting at.
Yeah.
Beyond direct, indirect impacts.
More just, I guess if we take out the word viral for a minute, I'm more trying to reinforce this idea that behaviors cause behaviors.
Got it.
Yeah. and this connection between the two. And indeed, if you can eventually leverage that stuff, you can make things sort of go viral in the company if you're able to arrange things correctly, right?
Okay. And go viral in a positive notion versus the negative notion. Positive viral, right? Okay. So it's what's going on that's actually promoting what we're looking for from a behavior perspective.
But you might see it in a negative way as well. You might see something happening in your organization that, oh my God, why are all these people, something's going on here. Everybody's on this bandwagon of something, right? And we don't like it much. Could it be that there's something else going on, another behavior by a couple of VPs or something that is driving this?
Right. Infecting it.
Infecting us and causing this mass behavior to happen. Could be, right? Again, I'm just trying to provide this different way of looking at it. Yeah. Instead of, oh, they're not following the rules, let's implement more rules.
Making sense. Thank you. Took me a little while to really, differentiate with that in my head and get that clear.
It is not an easy concept. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kenneth, with respect to, the go-do, right, you gave us a diagnostic. What are these 3 areas we're looking at, why we're looking at them, given us several great suggestions about what to do about anything else in terms of what to do before we get into wrap up.
No, I think that's really what I was hoping to accomplish today is, again, just give a few places to look. And then kind of when we look in those places, what kinds of things can we do to reset our frame of reference and look at what's going on from a different perspective, right? This is that classic elephant picture, right? Where all the blind people are touching a different piece of the elephant, right? I'm just trying to get us to look at it from a different side.
Awesome. Well, Kenneth, this has been great. And, I really appreciate you taking a cut at this, getting away from just the hard Lean Six Sigma stuff, if you will, and tools and process and technology, and really getting at the human side of this and taking kind of a slant at the behavioral awareness and assessment that's really critical to be successful. So if people will get in touch with you, they got questions for you, want to pick your brain, maybe understand these concepts better, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best way is through my email, which is kenneth.wisinski@sapartners.com. They can also visit our website, sapartners.com, and they'll be connected with me or any one of our colleagues.
All right. Well, awesome. Kenneth, awesome again. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Ron. Take care.
Thank you for joining MetaPod. For requests on topics or to ask questions, you can connect with Ron Crabtree 3 ways: via email at metapod@metaexperts.com, via LinkedIn, or by calling him directly at 734-425-1455, extension 103. Lastly, if you love the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. We truly appreciate all your support.